Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. I'm David Skorton, the president of Cornell University, and we're very, very honored to have Governor Andrew Cuomo with us here today. One more round of applause for the governor. Governor, on behalf of a grateful state, thank you for another excellent session and for all the things you're doing for all of us in the state of New York. In just a moment, you're going to hear from one of my many bosses, the SUNY Chancellor, Nancy Zimpher, another one of my bosses, Trustee and Dr. Gregory Galvin, and then finally, Governor Cuomo. We also have some special guests here today that I would like to take just a moment and ask you to help me acknowledge. In the order in which I was given these names. Senator Tom O'Mara. Chair of the Tompkins County Legislature, Martha Robertson. Mayor of the City of Ithaca, Savanti Myrick. Mayor for the City of Cortland, Brian Tobin. My two colleagues, President of Ithaca College, Tom Roshan, and President of TC3, Carl Haynes. Please. And we're very proud to be your partners in many ways, and it's wonderful to have you on campus. Since taking office at the beginning of 2011, Governor Cuomo has shown that he understands the integral role that New York's colleges and universities play in so many aspects of the state, including its economy. By producing new ideas and vital research in dozens of fields, and by educating our young people for the jobs and the civic responsibilities of tomorrow, New York's over 300 colleges and universities are very much a part of the action. And the governor has recognized this, and for that, sir, we're very grateful. The governor has taken bold steps to strengthen the role that SUNY schools, as well as the over 100 private colleges and universities, play in revitalizing the upstate economy. The governor made sure that scholars and researchers from a wide range of fields were included in the now well-established regional economic development councils. And in addition to these councils and the New York SUNY 2020 initiatives, Governor Cuomo signed Startup New York, which will create innovative tax-free zones around SUNY schools all across the state, helping businesses and jobs to grow and, just as important, to stay here in New York. Cornell already plans an important economic role in the state, and not only as an employer and educator. In just the past 3 fiscal years, Cornell research in Ithaca, Geneva, and at Weill Cornell Medical College in New York City have led to the development of 29 startup companies, 25 are still active, and 17 of them are still in New York State. And just one college, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, not only educates students for success in agribusiness, but also benefits agriculture throughout the state through research and the work of the Cornell Cooperative Extension. Now, with Startup New York, Governor Cuomo has given Cornell and higher education institutions around the state a new opportunity to boost our economic development impact. For the program to be successful, academics throughout the state will have to continue, slowly but surely, to step out of our comfort zones, and even more than many of us have in the past, focus on innovation and growth, so that we can make New York State a global destination for innovators and for academics alike. It has truly been an honor, Governor, to work side by side with you and your team on a variety of issues, and I thank you for your dedication to ensuring that higher education in New York continues to be among the best in this nation, and that is to say, among the best anywhere. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. I had the great honor of being on the search committee for the Chancellor of the SUNY system. I take complete credit for all the good work that you do, because you are my candidate and you've done much, much more than any of it could be expected. Please welcome Chancellor Nancy Zimpher.
Hi, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here, and I won't comment on how many bosses it takes to manage David Scorton. But I will tell you that we truly are great partners, and that is true from the very beginning. I actually began my tenure, thanks to David and the search committee from the SUNY board, June 1 of 2009, and on June 3rd began a 64-campus tour right here at Cornell. Most recently, David was kind enough to invite me to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Land Grant Act and how important the 4 colleges that are affiliated with SUNY and the state of New York are to be a part of that land grant mission and vision. And I often say imitation is the finest form of flattery. We want to be just like you. To all the dignitaries who are here, faculty, staff, students, and friends of Cornell, and to Carl Haynes. Thank you, Carl. A few months ago, maybe over a year ago, invited several of the area presidents to come and talk about how together we could do economic development. So we are no stranger to what we're talking about today. It was 2.5 years ago that SUNY was able to articulate a vision where we could be by our own choice, an economic engine for the revitalization of the state of New York and to help grow businesses in New York. So that's been our vision since my great privilege of arriving here. Our institutions are partnering across the state. We have a SUNY campus within 30 miles of every New Yorker, so what we're talking about today is absolutely on target. Startup New York is the type of initiative our communities need to engage higher education and business. And as we have talked about this, and the governor and I have been to various SUNY campuses and to many constituencies, we talked a lot about the relationship of higher education to business, but Startup New York really gives us that connectivity. Our relationship with Governor Cuomo really began with what we call NY SUNY 2020, which began with an investment in our SUNY campuses. We're now in our 3rd round of that investment and working regionally and in our research universities to help grow the economy. David and I travel in national circles, and I can tell you people are watching New York. They are very, very interested in Startup New York. So I think one way to think about what Governor Cuomo has done is not only is this a model for New York, I think it's going to be a model for the country. So it's my great privilege to be here today and to support the governor's efforts and to fully engage in Startup New York. We wanted in this visit to recognize local businesses as well that are in partnership with this work as a real testimony to what we're about. And so Dr. Greg Galvin, President and CEO of Kionics, got that right, Greg, is here to talk with you as well. So your turn at the podium.
Thank you, Chancellor. Governor, it's great to welcome you here to Ithaca. Thank you for coming out here to bring your message to us and to this community. I have had the honor of working with the governor and the Southern Tier, if I could read anything on here, New York Regional Economic Development Council, and I can tell you without a doubt, this is the most business-friendly government in Albany we have seen in many years. Never before have we in the business community had in New York State a more proactive and dedicated partner in Albany. The governor has made #1 priority since assuming office creation of jobs, and he knows that he needs the private sector to support him in this effort. And this year, the clear winner in this legislative session was Upstate New York, specifically Upstate colleges and Upstate businesses. Upstate New York has never had such a powerful economic incentive as we now have with Startup New York. If you look at the tremendous research output of our academic institutions compared with the number of startup businesses in Upstate New York, there's a terrible mismatch. And I think this program has a great potential to erase some of that mismatch. Over the past 29 months, business owners across the state have had more access and more input to the government of the state on matters that matter to our economy here. The governor has listened to us, he worked with us, and now he is giving us what we need to grow our businesses and create jobs in New York. Thank you, Governor, for your continued partnership and leadership. And it's now my great honor and privilege to introduce the governor of our great state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Boy, oh boy, Cornell University. I knew if I kept asking, I'd eventually get in. Took me 35 years. It is truly my pleasure to be at this great institution that has done so much for so many young minds, so much for the community, so much for the state of New York, so much for this country. So it's truly my pleasure to be here. To your dean, who not only is he a fantastic leader for this organization, he also has been great from my point of view for the state. We've given him a number of special assignments. He's been very helpful on the program we're talking about today. We also then gave him a very unusual assignment. We had a problem. We have something called the New York Racing Association, which runs horse racing in the state of New York. It's been highly problematic for many, many years. It's very complicated. It's defied all sorts of solution, and it's been a multi-decade debacle. So we needed someone to come in and take care of this. I said, now who would be very good with a lot of difficult personalities and egos, very high stakes, high finance, big gamble? I said, university president, who could be better than Dean Skorton? So he's come in, he's taken over NYRA, and he's done a magnificent job. But whatever he touches, he does well. Let's give him a round of applause. Your Dean Skorton. Chancellor Nancy Zimpher, as soon as you hear her and you see the light that comes off her and the energy that she generates, you know what? She's been a fantastic chancellor. She's taken SUNY, which in concept is really brilliant. It is the democratic equalizer of education, right? Democratic with small d. And she has really invigorated the SUNY system all across the state with her imagination, her creativity, and she's a dynamo. Let's give her a round of applause and thank her for her leadership. To Mr. Galvin, I want to thank you for what you do on the Regional Economic Development Council. And Mr. Galvin actually makes the point that we're making today about creating jobs from university centers and keeping those jobs here in the state of New York. So, Mr. Galvin, thank you. Thank you for your service. And we have Mayor Tobin and Mayor Myrick. Thank you for being here. And my colleague from Albany, Senator Tom O'Mara. Pleasure to be with you, Senator. We've had a good legislative session this year. I've been governor 2.5 years, just finished our 3rd legislative session. And by all accounts, it was a productive legislation. By all accounts, the past 2.5 years, we've had good success at government. We haven't been perfect. We're not bouncing up against the ceiling of perfection. But we've done what the government needed to do. I don't know if you remember back a few years, the constant dysfunction of state government. It was a joke. Didn't get anything done, didn't get budgets done on time. Had all sorts of scandals. We've cleaned that up, and we've had 3 budgets on a row. We passed legislation that has made a difference all across this country. So we're getting the state running. People ask me all the time, well, how come it's working now and it didn't work before? There is no short answer to that, and sometimes I think about it myself. If there was one factor, it's that the governor and the legislature have a different relationship now than they did. And 2.5 years ago when I started, we sat down and we said, look, this just doesn't work, you know. The government is a laughingstock. When the government is a laughingstock, it makes the state progress problematic. And gridlock defeats everyone. Gridlock, you have two sides arguing their point of view. Nothing happens. Everybody loses, right? That's gridlock. There's no great admiration in gridlock and debating to gridlock. There's nothing that anyone should be proud of. Sometimes you hear these, in politics, we delight in espousing the ideal to the point of paralysis. I don't delight in that. I don't know why anyone would. So we said, let's have a different relationship. We can be Democrats, we can be Republicans, we can be liberals, we can be conservatives, but we're New Yorkers first. And let's put that up front, and let's make that primary. And let's focus less on the differences and work on finding commonality. So we don't always agree, but we always get the job done, and we make the government function, and we don't stop the functionality for our differences. And that relationship is what has worked for the state. So Tom and I, we come from different political parties, Democrat, Republican. I won't tell you who is who. But that is less important in that we are both New Yorkers, and we're working to make this state function, and it has. And my hat is off to the state legislature and Senator Tom O'Mara for doing that, for putting his job and public service ahead of politics. And that's worked. Senator Tom O'Mara, pleasure to be with him. We had a robust legislative session. It just ended a couple of weeks ago, but one of the main pieces we got done is what I want to talk to you about today, and what the Dean was mentioning, and Mr. Galvin and the Chancellor, which is Startup New York. Because by far and away, the #1 mission for the state of New York, we do a lot of good things, got a lot of good things done this session that need to be noted, that need to be furthered. I was working yesterday on the texting law that we passed, the law against driving while texting. We're going to spend a lot of time on that. That's going to save lives. But if there's one mission that it's really about, it's about creating jobs and getting the economy running. Why? Because if people have jobs, there's a career path, then they have a journey that they're on. If the economy is running, the mayors are getting money, businesses are thriving, that takes care of a lot of the above, right? So getting the economy running for a state is truly job one. And getting it done for upstate New York is in particular a priority. Now, I don't mean to be a little blunt and a little stark, but I believe if you are unwilling to admit a problem, you will never solve the problem, right? Denial is not a life strategy. #1 task for a governor of New York, #1 task for a state legislature, I believe, is the upstate economy. And the upstate economy has not been a problem for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. As a matter of fact, it has nothing to do with this economic cycle. This has been a 20, 30, 40-year problem. I was in Buffalo a few weeks ago, and the fellow said to me, yeah, it's been a bad economy for 50 years. In truth, upstate New York never recovered after the manufacturing boom. That's what built the upstate economy, the Erie Canal, the cities along the Erie Canal. That's where it started. We were a manufacturing economy. 50s to 60s, the manufacturing moves. What's Act 2 for the economics of this state? We never had an Act 2. And it's been this slow bleed from the manufacturing loss. And we never really figured out what was next, what was the second economic act. And we've been dealing with that loss all throughout. So yes, there's been an economic downturn, 2006, 2007. Slowed the downstate economy. But that's not what's happening upstate. It has nothing to do with 2006. It was 1960. Acknowledge that problem. Acknowledge the extent of the problem, because the extent of the problem is going to suggest the extent of the solution. What we've been trying to do is a two-step agenda over the past 2 years. First, battle the reality and the perception of New York as a high-tax, anti-business state. Why? You hear it from everyone, everywhere. Taxes and anti-business environment for the state of New York. It's a mantra. Now, it's a perception problem at a minimum It's a more complex problem because it's not just a perception problem, it's a reality problem. We have one of the worst tax structures in the nation. We're either dead last or second to last. Neither bodes well for an economic future. So that's been the first issue. And how do you deal with the perception issue when it's grounded in reality? Do something about the reality. We passed a property tax cap, which takes care of the most onerous tax in the state. It's not the income tax. It's the property tax. And property taxes in upstate New York. We have some of the highest property taxes in the country. What's been happening is that people from upstate have been leaving, the population gets reduced, and it raises the property taxes on those people who remain. We passed the property tax cap. Property taxes can't go up more than 2% unless a supermajority votes in favor. Local governments don't like it. Mayors give me a dirty look because it restrains their spending. But what I say to the local governments is your spending can only go up 2%. By the way, the taxpayer doesn't have anything more than 2% to give you. It's not like the house went up more than 2% or the income went up more than 2%. So the local governments actually have to live within their means, and that's been the property tax cap. We cut taxes on the middle class broadly defined, from $40,000 in income to $300,000. $300,000 is middle class, I don't know, but upper middle class. That group pays the lowest tax rate in 60 years this year. Lowest tax rate in 60 years. Not adjusted for inflation, nothing, just as a tax rate, the lowest rate in 60 years for the middle class. We've also cut taxes for businesses, corporate taxes, et cetera. And the way we've done it is by limiting government spending. And we've been using the excess to cut taxes. And we limit the state spending to 2%, which is the same amount we ask the local governments to hold their spending to. 2%, the state was spending 8, 9, 10, 11% more every year, year after year after year. We held that spending down to 2%. Step two was, okay, you're bringing down the barriers, you're bringing down the obstacles. You need an affirmative plan at the same time. The affirmative plan are regional-based, higher ed-driven public-private sector partnerships. Now, that sounds like a mouthful, but it just puts together a couple of very simple concepts. Where the jobs are being generated are from higher education institutions, not just in the state, not just in this country, around the globe. That's what is generating the jobs. Not in a town, not in a city, but in a region that is working together and is thriving. And not by government, certainly, because government doesn't create jobs, but where the government has a good relationship with the private sector, and they're actually working hand in glove. Those are the pieces that you need to put together. That's the sweet spot. You put the entrepreneurialism together with academia, together with a regional economy. Those three triangulate the sweet spot for successful economic models around the country and around the world. We call it E squared, the Education Economic Development Continuum. It's no longer an education system and an economic development system, and they're two different systems. Where it's working now is when they are merged in one system. The education system builds and blends in to the economic development system. So it starts with early education and the best education you can get for children through primary, through secondary, and it blends into an economic development situation where you have a business-friendly community. And that's everything we've done for the past 2 years. Regional Economic Development Council that Mr. Galvin is on, regional councils, government officials, private sector people working together, investing in the SUNY system, SUNY 2020, what we call innovation hotspots, New York Open for Business, Business Incubator, Venture Capital Fund, all working individual pieces along that continuum from education to economic development. Over 2 years, we've made remarkable progress. It's working under very difficult circumstances because we still don't have the national economy with us. So to get the upstate New York economy running at a time when the national economic tide is going against you is no small feat, but we're making progress. We've had the lowest unemployment rate since 2009 in the last numbers. So upstate New York is making progress. But now we want to bring all the pieces together, and we want to bring the approach to scale, which means what? Which means if you have a big problem, you need a big solution. And we have a big problem. What is the single greatest obstacle to economic development in upstate New York? If you had a magic wand, and I said, wave the magic wand and solve the upstate problem, you would wave the wand and say it's high taxes. It is the high taxes, period. That is what makes upstate New York non-competitive, is the tax base. That's what you hear from everyone who's leaving. That's what you hear from people who are struggling to stay. It is the high taxes. What would the optimal solution be? Zero taxes. Just eliminate taxes. That would be the solution. That's what the Startup New York program does. It eliminates taxes in a large part of upstate New York. It's that simple, but it's that bold, and it's that difficult at the same time. It takes that sweet spot that we've been working on, and it makes it a tax-free environment. So you take all the SUNY campuses, 64 SUNY campuses in the state of New York. 55 of the 64 are in upstate New York. Every SUNY campus becomes a tax-free community. You take the private schools in New York, 100 private schools, they become tax-free communities up to 3 million square feet. Or a private school or a SUNY campus can designate an area in the vicinity up to 200,000 square feet to be a tax-free space. When you say no taxes, what do you mean? I mean no taxes, not political speak, not with a caveat, truly tax-free space. No business tax, no corporate tax, no sales, no property, no franchise, no income tax for owners or employees of the company. So it would be a 100% tax-free environment. Startup New York, it cuts taxes where we need the help the most, which is upstate New York. People say, well, why don't you cut taxes for everyone? Highest tax rate right now is 8% in the state of New York, depending on your income. To drop from 8% to 7%, drop 1 point, costs $6 billion. How much is $6 billion? It's all the money in the world. I've never seen $6 billion as governor. I will never see $6 billion. Every budget I've had starts with a deficit, $1 billion, $2 billion. We're never going to get $6 billion to go from 8 to 7. Why? Because to go from 8 to 7 statewide means you have to drop the taxes downstate New York. That's where the population is, and that's where the wealth is. So to drop the taxes on everyone in the state, to drop the taxes on downstate New York is very expensive. And frankly, I don't need to drop the taxes in downstate New York to help upstate New York. I want to focus on upstate. Also, dropping the tax rate from 8 to 7 does nothing for upstate New York. Dropping it from 8 to 6 does nothing. Dropping it from 8 to 5 would do nothing. Why? Because the competition is at 0. When you ask somebody where are they going, we're going to Florida, no income tax. Texas, no income tax. Carolinas, it's not about 1 or 2 points. You have to get to 0. And it's more of a problem in upstate New York, so that's where it has to happen. We also have a protection for existing business, where this program is designed for new businesses that start up on college campuses and have a connection to the college or the university. We also have a further protection that if it is a business that is going to compete with a business that already exists in the region, it's prohibited. And we want to do it on a scale that makes a difference. Eligible space, when you add it all up, is 120 million square feet. How much is that? 120 million square feet, is that a lot or is that a little? That is more than the space, commercial space in San Francisco and Philadelphia combined. It is more space than all the commercial space in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse combined. So, my friends, we're not talking about a little boutique program. We are talking about a major transformation of the tax structure in upstate New York that I believe is going to be a game changer for the basic dynamic of the upstate economy. And the reason it has to be a winning formula is because to get zero taxes in those other states, you have to live in those other states. And that's a problem. Here, you get to live in the greatest state in the nation, and you're at zero taxes. We said in the beginning of the year, we talked about New York Rising when we started the legislative session. And the concept of New York Rising was that New York had issues. We were just coming out of Hurricane Sandy, which had tremendous devastation downstate New York, Long Island, parts of southern tier. And New York was building back from that. We were talking about building back from a bad upstate economy that had been bad for decades, but that we were going to rise up and we were going to do better than before. And I believe we accomplished that during this session. And it's almost this simple. People have been leaving upstate New York. Yes, and they have been for many years. And I've talked to hundreds of them. And they all say the same thing. I have to leave. They don't say, I want to leave. I have to leave. My wife got a job and I have to leave. My business moved and I have to leave. I can't pay for the taxes and I have to leave. My business is transferred me and I have to go. Nobody says, I want to go. We have forced people from upstate New York. It was our tax structure that has forced businesses from upstate New York, and the people had to follow the businesses. We created the problem. Just stop creating the negative. Stop creating the liability. Reduce the problem, which is the high taxes, and then the assets will overcome the liability. And you have every asset imaginable. I spent 8 years in the federal government during the Clinton administration. I was in Washington for all 8 years. I worked in every state in the nation, multiple times. I know what every other state has. Nobody has what we have here. Nobody has the collection of assets. Nobody has the higher educational facilities, the healthcare facilities, the geography, the diversity. You have the most sophisticated urban areas in the country in one state. You have the most beautiful rural areas all in one state. No one could want to go somewhere else to raise a family. You have everything possible. Just stop creating the negative. And I believe this is the start for that. There's a reason why this state was always the leader. There's a reason why people always came here. There's a reason why people got in ships, went across oceans, came to a country they didn't know with a language they couldn't speak, and they wound up in this state. Because it is a special collection of talent and assets and beauty. We stop the negative, and we'll change the trajectory of this state. And it won't just be what it was as the Empire State. I believe we can reach a new height that has never been reached with this state. And I believe we took the first step this session. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we're behind you. We're working this. Thank you, Governor.